Okay, I think we're good to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon and welcome to the CCSQ DNA Town Hall. For those of you who are new, these calls are designed to provide you with updates, announcements, and training demos related to the CDR, SAS via Databricks, and more. So before we get started today, let's go ahead and cover some administrative items. So please do remember to stay muted during the call to minimize interruptions for our presenters. Please use the Zoom chat feature to ask any questions that will be answered during our Q&A portion. Today, during one of our sessions, we will be stopping occasionally for Q&A since it is more demo-based. And then all meeting materials will be made available in Portal after our event wraps. Just a reminder to just give us a little bit of time to turn those around so we can get those 508'd and made compliant. So then let's go over today's agenda. So first, we're going to be kicking things off with an announcement for the CCSQ DNA Fall Data Camp promo, and then we'll be moving into our monthly satisfaction survey results review. And then finally, we're going to have a presentation and demo with getting started with Databricks. So with that, let's hand things over to Amy Tam for more information on our Fall Data Camp.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Amy Tam. I am from CMS, lead for the portal and user services team. We would like to invite you all to join our fall data camp on November 12th and 13th. We have a nice lineup of educational sessions, including the latest update on SAS via transition, Databricks sessions, a new code conversion tool called SAS to Pi, and in addition to some other informational sessions that we feel that you will find very valuable. You may visit the DNA portal under the upcoming events section to see additional information, and the agenda is posted as well. If you did not receive the calendar invite, you may complete the request form, which is on portal, which is also included within the agenda. A link to the form, I believe Laura will attach it to the chat below if you would like an invite for data camp. So I think up next, Julia, you will be sharing a nice little promo video about data camp.
On November 12th and 13th, the CCSQ Data and Analytics team will be holding our 7th CCSQ Data Camp, a multi-session event focused on educating the CCSQ D&A user community. The mission of the CCSQ DNA team is to encourage our community to come to the data, as it is vital to build and utilize centralized, robust, and reliable data and analytics solutions. During this data camp, we will be exploring sessions on the SAS via transition, Databricks, and the SAS 2Pi code conversion tool. We will conclude the Fall 2024 data camp with a session centered around CCSQ's future vision for the roadmap. Visit the CCSQ DNA portal for updates on session and invitation information.
Thank you, Julia.
Thanks, Amy. So next I'm going to be passing things over to Miriam for information on our monthly satisfaction survey review.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. As Julia stated, I'm going to cover our satisfaction survey results for September. Could you go to the next slide, please? So I will caveat this before I start giving any of the stats that last month we did only receive 10 responses. So we have drastic increases from the previous month, but that again is due to only receiving 10 survey responses. So with the overall satisfaction for the performance and uptime for the environment, we were at 100%. That's a 43% increase from August. Overall satisfaction for help desk was 70%. This was a 1% decrease from August. And then our overall resources available in CCSQ, we had an overall satisfaction of 90%, which was a 33% from August. Next, we'll cover the positive praise and feedback. So we got some feedback that they're very appreciative of Dan for taking the time to talk with them and explain how to examine resource usage. The Databricks environment has been far superior to SAS Viya. And then another one was that they like the Databricks Assistant. It's a very helpful tool. Some suggestions and improvements that we received for the environment was that a corrupt file had been identified after the last maintenance event, and that the community would appreciate more information being provided broadly about the possible issues that likely affect others unknowingly. So we are looking into that with the help desk. The suggestion was having guidelines for writing an initial request in Slack, noting that guidelines would help with security and clarity. And then training material, what was suggested is more advanced notebook training, Databricks mount points, and easier navigation of office hour content. And with that, are we dropping the link in the chat for the survey to be completed? As I stated, we do value your guys' feedback a lot. We do depend on you filling out the survey results so that we can get accurate data back, and then that way we can determine what areas we can improve in. So if you could take a few minutes out of your day to just fill out that survey, it's greatly appreciated.
Laura at this point did drop that link in the chat. And then just a few notes as you take the survey. This survey helps us to know how we can improve your experience within the CCSQ DNA environment and community. The results will be used, as Miriam said, to improve our tools, trainings, and offerings. Our responses have been low lately, and obviously we want to make sure that we're hearing from as many people as possible. So please do take the time to do that. Things can't improve and get better if we don't hear from you. So the survey link will be shared in the Zoom chat now, which Laura did just share that. We encourage you to take the survey as soon as our meeting ends. The survey will remain open until the end of the day. Please only submit a survey if you are a user within our environment. And as a reminder, the survey is anonymous, but if you do have a specific question or do want follow-up, please provide your information so we can provide support where needed. Okay, so with that, I'm going to pass things over to Sheila now. I know she's having some technical difficulties.
We are back up again.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to stop screen sharing then, Sheila, so you can pick up.
Sure. Just broke my blinds trying to get the lighting right. Anyway, hi everybody. My name is Sheila Stewart, and I'll be talking to you today about Databricks Assistant. I'm a solutions architect with Databricks, and I've been at Databricks for over 5 years now. And I support pretty much all HHS agencies and anyone under HHS. So I'm happy to meet you all. There are quite a few of you on here. But today we're going to focus on Databricks Assistant. So let me share my screen. Let me get this in slideshow mode. And please let me know if you don't see the slides and if you don't see the demo when we move to it. But
we can see your slides and things look good.
Okay, perfect. So the first thing I want to do is, this is not going to be a slide heavy presentation. We're just going to go through a few things about Databricks Assistant and how it can help you. And then we'll go into the platform in real time, kind of play around with it and through either code conversion or asking questions, and just see how you can interact with the assistant to kind of help your journey as you onboard into Databricks. Is also, if you have workloads on Databricks, how to kind of improve your experience with it. All right, let's see. All right. So I always like to dial back to the kind of the idea of a lake house when we start these things, just so we can all get on the same page at the same time. I'm sure at least conceptually, you all understand a lake house and the idea of having your data. Your data could be in multiple places, but the idea is that having a governance, well, we're not quite at Unity Catalog, but the idea is having your data easily accessible from one platform. And then from that, and it's governed according to what you have access to in the data. And then from that, being able to field multiple different types of use cases. So whether you're doing data science, whether you're doing an ETL or data pipeline, if you're doing some orchestration of like notebooks and dashboards and so on, or if you're doing the analytics and like a data warehousing, so analytics, dashboarding, SQL, heavy queries and stuff. Regardless, that's all on kind of the same sort of lake house idea. So your data is there, it's governed, and now you can field your variety of use cases. So how this ties to Databricks Assistant is Databricks Assistant is available and has knowledge at all of these different levels. And so when we go into the platform, we'll see that regardless of kind of the area that you are working in, you can ask questions with the assistant, and you can also kind of start using the assistant to help you with, code generation, or at least to get you started with a framework to be able to kind of help you on your journey a lot faster. So specific for that is that again, that assistant, it is available in all those different types of environments within Databricks. So whether you're using the Databricks SQL and the SQL editor, you can use it for help with your code to debug and all of that. In dashboards themselves, you can ask, you can tell it what you want to see and have it generate visualizations or tabular data for you. And also in the notebooks themselves. The notebooks for me is probably the one place that I use the assistant the most. And I do that for even just generating code, which we'll look at in a few minutes. All right, so some of the big features that you might not have known about with Databricks Assistant that I'll just kind of lay out here. First is auto completing. So if you're, you're writing a select statement, you want to write a for loop, you just start typing in. There is actual auto completion with like kind of an example of, you can just hit tab and have that all filled in if you're like creating a for loop or something. So code completion really helps with, how do I construct using this function? How would I be able to write this kind of query? So we'll look at that quickly. Also, code transformation. So this is something that I use quite a bit of. Whether you're an R user, I mean, maybe you write in a SAS user, maybe you're writing in code in like SQL and you want to change into PySpark or Python. But that ability to take a code block or your code and be able to transform it into another language, Assistant is fantastic with. And we'll look at an example of converting code from SAS into PySpark, and you'll be able to see that. So it lets you really kind of go between all of your different types of code. Like if you're an R user and you have a bunch of R code, but you want to be able to transition it into PySpark, or whether you want to keep it in R, you can put this in there and Assistant will actually develop the code for you and spit that out for you. All right. You can also see, I mean, how many times have you looked at code and thought, what is this person doing? Or what's happening in this block of code? I don't fully understand it. You can actually have it explain what's happening in the code to you. Just tell me, can you explain what this is doing? And it will actually write out what it's doing. And if you look at the little video here, line by line saying, this is doing this, this is doing this, and combined, it's creating this for you. And of course, when you write code, if you're like me, you'll never figure out the parenthesis that you forgot to close, and you'll have tons of trouble figuring out, how do I debug this? Or maybe you spelled something wrong. And after you've been working for a while, if you're in the notebooks, it's really, really hard to figure out where that error occurred. There's actually ability to diagnose and fix that error within your code block through a quick, easy button called Diagnose Error. The assistant will take that and it will point out to you where potential errors are or where there is an obvious error. And it'll allow you to pull that code in or replace that code and rerun it with no error. All right. And of course, with help and support, you can ask it pretty much anything about Databricks and it will answer. And between you all and I have actually asked it before, why is the sky blue? And it answers it pretty accurately. So it's definitely has a lot of information that's used to train the model behind it, as well as all the Databricks documentation. So you can go in here and ask it, and we'll do that. That'll be the first thing we do, to be able to kind of help you as you start out. All right, and I think that's it. So we can go into the platform. All righty. So hopefully, I think most of you are familiar with the Databricks platform in some capacity. So what I have here is I have a notebook, and it's just an assistant demonstration. So the first thing we're going to start with is actually, let's just bring up the assistant first of all. So regardless of what screen you're in, or regardless of where you are in the Databricks platform, this nifty little purplish diamondy shape in the upper right that you see here, this is actually how you start the assistant. And as a quick check, if this screen and the words are not big enough, please let me know. I don't have the chat, but I'll bring the chat up as well. That way, just let me know if it's not big enough. I'll make it a little bit bigger. Oops, not that. I'll make it a little bit bigger right now. And so hopefully you all can see what we're doing here. If it's not big enough, just let me know. Okay, so what you see here, this this kind of nifty logo that moves around when you go over it, if you click that, that'll open up the assistant, and that'll be your the area where you can go in and ask it all these questions. I don't know where this blue line happened. I don't know how to get rid of it. Hopefully it fades away at some point soon. All right, anyway, so just to start off, suppose you have, let's just suppose we have data in an S3 bucket, and we want to be able to, ingest it and look at it. So ingestion here is going to be bringing it into your compute, so into your memory, and being able to ingest it. So actually, one quick thing, as my computer shut down earlier, I need to restart up my compute, I think, unless it's on. So I apologize. Let me just start up my compute while we're doing this so it starts. Okay, so I'm going to go back to here. So now within the assistant, suppose I want to bring in data that's sitting in a volume on an S3 in an S3 bucket. Sorry if I apologize for saying things like volume. In a couple of months when you're on Unity Catalog, though, that will make more sense. But just for clarity, when I say volume, it's just an S3 bucket basically, or a path within an S3 bucket, where you can put this where the raw data would go. And you could, you already have raw data in S3, so it's just basically encapsulated and putting permissions around it for access from Databricks through a volume. All right, so if I say, how do I load files from an S3 bucket and visualize them. So now the assistant, and all right, so now what the assistant did is it's going out and it's telling you. The greatest part about this is that it'll actually give you some code, and you can fill in that information and be able to, and it gave you a source right there as to where that information came from, but you can see here. So they want to make sure that the configuration to be able to access your S3 bucket is there. So you need to have your credentials or your permissions, and that's generally taken care of at the administration level. So you should have that access to your S3 bucket through the QDAS team. And then from there, you can, if you wanted to list the files in the bucket, you can. But to read the data, it gives you the code in Python. I can ask it in whatever language I want. I think the assistant knows I like Python best. It always gives it to me in Python unless I say it otherwise. But it tells you how you would do it, and then to visualize it, how you could see the tabular data. So this actually gives you the ability to say, oh, okay, I want to replace the contents of a cell. So I want to take this code and put it in a cell. Or I can just copy the data out and I could throw it in a cell. And I can take this information here and I can put in what the actual path is. And then I can just run this and it will allow me to do that. And then if I do the display, I'll be able to see it. So this will read in the data and this will display it for me. But right now, so basically the assistant is great for that beginning where you're not sure how to begin, but you know what you want to do. And you can make it much more complicated than I just want to read data from an S3 bucket. You can ask it, how would I, if I have a tab delimited file with bad records, how do I impose my data quality standards on it or something like that. And it'll go out, it'll answer, and it'll give you those references as to the documentation that talks about that. All right. So one thing that I showed was the ability to automatically generate code. And yes, this right here, it automatically generated code. But what if you have the data in here and you're not sure exactly what to do to be able to take that data, visualize it, or do something with it? Well, right now, it says here, you can start just typing in your query, or you can type in code directly, or you can generate that code with AI. When you generate it, that's backed by the Databricks assistant. If I hit generate with AI, I can now just type something in. And I put the prompt of what I was trying to do up here. And once I'm done going through kind of the standard stuff here, we'll open it up and we'll just try different things together. Oh, and I see can you enter a path? And you mean for right here, the path to your file? Yes, it would be, you'd have your bucket and then you'd have, whatever path underneath that to be able to read that data. And if if you mean like a file folder with many files underneath it that are the same kind of, that should be in the same table or the same schema, then yes, you would just put a star, you do .csv, you put in the path, and then you hit go, and it would read in all of the files underneath there into this data frame. That's assuming the columns are consistent for the most part between all those files. All right. So here, when we're generating code, you can generate, I could have written this question into there as well, or I can say, I want to see patient claims at CMS. How would I do that? I can generate the code for it. And now it's showing me what the query is. And so one thing you're going to note here, well, a couple of things you'll note, is that right here, it says select star, and it gave me like, where an actual data set that had that patient claims data within it. One thing to note is that before you're in Unity Catalog, this is some metadata from Unity Catalog, which you're not quite in yet. So here, it will give you kind of the same thing as here, like this path to the file. It'll give you the from, and it'll give you a generic table name. And you would go in and you'd replace that because that table name wouldn't exist. So I did this earlier. I'm going to accept this right now. I did this earlier to see, and before it had knowledge, it gave me a generic name for a table. So, so if I take this, and hopefully my cluster is starting. Hopefully it's almost there.
Hey, Sheila, is it worth mentioning like you actually taught the assistant? I mean, that's a great thing.
No, so your data is never sent out and helping with the model.
Go.
This is more like prompt engineering.
Right.
So one thing to note, the data is not being sent to assistant. So you're not actually moving data to assistant itself. When you run a query on the compute cluster, that's when your data is moving from your storage to your compute. The only thing that gets sent to the assistant is your query itself, because it needs to answer that query, as well as once you're in Unity Catalog, there's metadata associated, like metadata, like column names and things that could be sent to the assistant, but no row level data will ever be sent. So the LLM that backs our assistant is currently OpenAI. There's an OpenAI service that lives kind of in the control plane, like where our serverless compute lives. And so that's the service there. And we've signed the agreement, so they're not like recording your query in OpenAI or anything like that. We've signed an agreement with Microsoft. I forgot what the agreement name is, but I can send the security information site to you. No problem. All right. So this is actually what, oh, my computer spun up. Good. We're gonna let this play through. And I apologize, everything was up and going and my computer slowly crashed earlier. All right. Okay. So I just ran this code and it said, and I did kind of play it because I had prompted it earlier with the information with that table and things like that. It knows that that table exists now, the name of that table from a metadata standpoint. And so it filled it in when I asked the assistant, but originally this is what it asked. So when you run this, you see there's an error here. And then I'm going to make this smaller since I have it quite large on my screen. Oh, maybe I can't. So if I scroll down here, it says the table or view not found. This is a pretty easy one to interpret what that means, but sometimes you'll get see an error and you'll be like, I don't know what that means. So you can hit diagnose error. And now if you look at the assistant, it'll say what is the issue with that, right? So it's telling you that the issue is it can't find the table. So what to do, verify the schema catalog to be able to make sure that's your data. And then of course, the updated version of the code. So telling you, okay, which catalog, which schema should you, or which catalog should you use? What's your schema name, table name, and so on. And it kind of puts it all together. Result, sorry, I'm reading the chat as I go. Maybe I should wait for that. And I'll definitely, I'd love to hear more about the assistant getting hung up. I haven't seen that issue with the stuff I've been doing. But one thing is if I take that code and take what it said, and what I did was I created another cell and all I did was fix the name of my table, and I gave it the catalog, the schema, the table name to a table that actually exists. So now if I run this, oh, it already completed. It actually run. Did it run? This runs. I'm getting a little confused by one thing. Oh, it's running up here. Let's see. Alrighty. So this just ran, and you can see now all of the data within here. And so we can, I think I made the screen so big I can't find the bottom of it. So you can see all of the data within here. And we did that just by doing that diagnose. And we did it through that diagnosing the error. And another, confused why that happened again. All right, so in terms of code debugging, you know, you can put whatever your code is. And I will say that I've had it answer certain things incorrectly to me when I've gone through this. And I realized it was my runtime was incorrect. And then it started working. So assistant will be great for any sort of, for like your coding, your code conversion and things like that. Some of the errors, you'll have to prompt it a little bit more to be able to get to the root cause. But in this case, there is code here with some functions in it. And so when you go to write it and run it, and I'll just run this one again. The error is, and this one was a pretty easy one to find, but the zero division error, because you can see up here, we divided by 0. So it's basically saying that is the big problem. So when you do the diagnose error, you can actually see, oh, it's dividing by 0 here and whatnot, and it tells you how to best do it. This is changing the code to put a check in. And if I wanted to, what I could do is, all right, I can actually take this code it gave me. I can do this. This will replace the code in here, and I can rerun it. And now it runs to completion. All right. And then one of the, I will look at the exact model. We'll look at it right after this. I have this information. I just can't remember off the top of my head right now. All right. So in code conversion, I'll tell you what I did first before we run this. I had SAS code. I found SAS. Oh, my whole computer shut down earlier. So the SAS code tab went away. Hold on, I can grab it for you. Right here. So these are SAS code examples. They're basically rudimentary SAS code examples where what I did was I just pulled out a block of the code. So I think the one that we're looking for in here is right here. So I pulled out this block of code. And let's pull it out again. And all I did was come into here and I say, convert SAS to PySpark. And then I just paste the block of code and hit return. So now this goes and it's telling me how to convert that to PySpark. And it's giving me the code block to convert with. I have a lot of people who use this actively to convert code. I have a lot with pretty complicated SAS code and they put it in here. And they've been very successful, like even moving projects from SAS into Databricks in this way. So this is really neat. And I can do it again if you don't believe me, but this is the code that this returned. And I did this right before this meeting. All I did was pull this code. I just pressed this and it populated this cell here. And you can see, I'm letting you see that it's basically the same thing. And so when I run it on this side, I can run it. And let it do its run. So it's starting up an experiment. It's running a training model. It's doing a regression model. And so when this is done, you'll be able to see the plot out of it and everything. So what this did was, actually, we'll wait for a second. Let this finish. And then you can see this is command cell 10. So what I'm going to do, all right. We can see how far we are. It should be, yep. So this is, as this runs, what I'm going to do with the assistant is I don't understand SAS code myself. I'm not a SAS programmer at all, but I can say explain command 10. So you can see this all, and we use matplotlib, I think, to plot this. That's what it converted to, because that was the closest. Oh. And also for this, so if I say explain command 10, because it converted it to PySpark, it will go and it'll give you kind of a summary of what's happening in command 10 and then break it down for you as to what the different pieces are doing. And kind of give you a description of what's happening in it. So I find this useful if I'm looking at, maybe I'm collaborating with someone else and they have a block of code that I can't quite wrap my head around what it's doing. You can have the assistant help you and explain it so you can kind of understand the different things that are going on. So you know at what point to kind of fork into what you're trying to do, or what data is what you need based on what's going on within the code. So you see there's multiple ways to do the assistant, just either through notebooks, and this was a very notebook heavy demonstration, but it also is like if you're in the SQL editor and you want to do a a SQL, let me change, I'll change something within here. And if I want to kind of run something in SQL, in the SQL editor, I have SQL code, I can hit diagnose error, and this is yeah, this tells me, oh, this is what it should be. I can replace what's here. I can run it again. It's the same types of things. And see, now I can actually see my my raw results by, you know, how I have this visualized in the dashboard. One thing is, as the data is migrated into Unity Catalog, and that's just the meta store, so it's not necessarily moving data or anything like that. It's just registering it within Unity Catalog. And as that's done, you'll start getting like that metadata in terms of column names and stuff. I have it here in the assistant, and you'll find that when you run the assistant right now, it can't tell you about the metadata on your data. But as you move in, it'll be knowledgeable of that metadata, and you'll get more, the answers it gives will be more in tune with the data that you have. If that helps. All right. So now what I want to do is kind of, well, I can show you Lakeview as well, if you'd like to see it. Let's just create a dashboard. All right. And when we add data to the dashboard, I'm just gonna select that data that we were looking at before into here. And then in the canvas, we can, let's add a we'll add a visualization here. All right. So we can say maybe like this can be a histogram of ages with 10-year bins in claims. Let's see. Oh yeah, right. So we want age distribution. Oh. Let's see. Show me a histogram of ages. All righty. Let me get rid of assistant for a second and pull this over. So what I do sometimes, if assistant is acting a little funky with me, is I actually do this to get all of my data in place. And I don't want to count. I want the ages of people. See, this is where. Oh, that's why I don't want count on there. I want ages on the bottom. And for my y-axis, hold on one second. I don't get the little button on the side because I'm zoomed in too much. On the y-axis, I want count. So I can change it to that. I can probably ask my question a lot better to make sure that this is working well. But now I can see the age distribution within the data set itself. I can also make changes here, but I like it because at least this starts me out in the Lakeview dashboards. And if you kind of learn how to ask the questions very well, then this becomes a much easier kind of thing to work with, and is backed by assistant when you ask those questions. All right. So anything that you want to see that we can go to? I should mention that in terms of the model that's backing assistant, it is OpenAI. And I think Doug answered the question that it is GPT 3.5. Now, one thing I do want to note is that going forward, we are going to be that we are going to be adding in the ability to change, and this will be on the admin side, change that back model of assistant to like DBR or DBX or something like that. So you will have a couple of options of what to change that back end model to, if you prefer not to use the OpenAI GPT 3.5 model. And also I did want to, well, we can do that later. I can also show you the Databricks assistant page. I had all the tabs up, and I apologize, with my computer crash. I did not actually open up all of my tabs again, because I lost all my tabs in the crash. What is O1? Is that a different model?
Yeah. O1 is their most advanced chain of
Okay.
thought model.
Okay. I'm not sure. I'll look at our roadmap and see. I haven't heard of it, but that doesn't mean that it won't be available. I mean, the models in OpenAI, like in your OpenAI service or elsewhere, you can still use external models in Databricks itself. It's just backing the assistant. It's the bring your own or use a different external model that you can switch to. So it would probably be available to switch it to, but I have to look at the roadmap for when that would be available. I think sometime in early 2025 that becomes available to switch it out, but I don't know if we're restricting in that first iteration the different models you can switch it to.
Hey, Sheila, I can actually add to that. I'm on our internal page. It says the next one they want to add is GPT-4 Turbo.
Okay.
That's the next one for GA.
Right. Are there any other questions or anything you'd like to see? I know it's, I did want to leave time for us to kind of more dynamically go through this and see things. I know there was a question about, go back to that one, a question earlier about the assistant hanging up. I should just go back to my workspace. The question. Sorry, I'm going back to the question. Okay, so it's been getting hung up, repeatedly suggesting changes which still result in the same error. So actually, I did see that earlier today. That is one thing that I did see. So this is, well, to me, I thought this was really interesting, is that when I was running this code conversion query down here, it converted the code. And then what I did was I thought, okay, let me, my cluster's up, so I'll do this. I said, let me run it on a serverless cluster just to make it fast. With serverless, and you all have access to serverless now, it's there already. Those instances are warm, ready to go. So that 3-minute startup time is eliminated. So I thought, oh, I'll just run it on serverless and test all of this out. So when I hit run here, that's not what I wanted. I want it on this. Yeah, on here. So when I hit run on this block of code down here, I get an error. You'll see that. Yeah. Why is this working now? Yeah, no, it'll error. And it tells me, and this drove me nuts for a little while. And what it told me is I'm using vector assembler wrong. And it told me, oh, your notation is wrong. So when I looked at this, I was like, I don't know what's wrong with it. So I did the diagnose error. An assistant opened. And it told me that that I can update to a newer version of the vector assembler. But actually, when I was running this before, it told me that the way I was using vector assembler was wrong, and that the variables, the way I was entering it was wrong. And it said you should be doing it this way. And the code block matched what I had in there exactly. And so I thought, oh, maybe there's a weird character and I just can't see it. So I overwrote it with the new thing, and it was the same exact thing. And it gave me an error again and told me to switch the notation completely. And then that errored and it told me to switch back to the older notation that I had. And that's when I realized that it was the cluster. So, so depending what you're doing, if you're in serverless or if you're in a shared cluster, or in my case, I'm trying to run a regression model, and I was using a cluster that did not have the ML runtime. And ML runtime is not supported on, or the ML runtime was not on the serverless cluster that I had, and it was not on the single user cluster or on the shared cluster I was using. So when I made my own single user cluster, I added the ML runtime here, and then it worked. But I found that the assistant didn't tell me that, which was frustrating. It probably lasted maybe a half hour of me trying to figure out why the code wouldn't work right off the bat, because I even looked into vector assembler and found the calls for it were the exact same as what I had. So if the assistant gets stuck, you can just do a new thread if you want, though I'm not sure if the question is hanging out, but you can do a new thread. Sometimes I find that when something gets hung up, and I haven't tried it in the assistant's case, I just refresh the tab, and then and refreshing the tab helps quite a bit as well for me. But I will definitely look into that, because I hadn't seen that before, of what to do when it gets hung up. The funny thing is because I was playing around with the assistant, it's actually used some of my queries as prompts. So it's actually answering things a little bit better than it did when I was playing around with it, which is nice. All right. Again, floor is open. Anybody want to see anything in particular, or?
Sheila, there's a question. Is there a command easy way to reset the assistant if it gets stuck?
Right, that's what I was saying, is that you can reset the tab or create the new
Oh, you already answered that. My bad. My bad.
No problem at all. We can try and stump the assistant if anyone has ideas. And I will say some of the things like the find tables to query or find some queries. Well, let's click it and see what happens. I don't actually
Does
know.
anybody on the call have any experience using any LLM to write code? Even outside of work?
One, yes.
I see Raymond is saying yes, he uses it quite a bit.
So some of the stuff within here, you'll notice as you transition into Unity, you'll notice that the answers are a little bit more geared towards your metadata, which will help it as well. Right, anyone? All right, are there any other questions?
Hey, Sheila, I just know like a lot of people are saying that they use it. I mean, can anybody go off mute and maybe talk about the importance of prompt engineering in your own personal? Because I think Sheila mentioned, right, like, you can ask it a quick question, but can anybody want to talk about their personal experience with, writing better prompts? Well, I'll just note that prompt engineering is extremely important, especially when you're trying to write code like this. From my personal experience, my guess is that the folks who said that earlier have also had that experience. Sheila, is that your personal experience?
It is. You can definitely kind of give it guidelines to be able to have those answers be better matched to what you're trying to do, and also more, more like better to work with for you. Like some of these, I actually got a different answer this time. Not different, just wordier. So you can ask it to be more concise when it starts answering, just things that'll help you be able to consume the material.
Yeah,
The assistant knows that too, I'm sure.
So one thing I noticed with doing the prompt engineering in a kind of co-coding experience is in line with what Sheila said. If you think about how you're thinking through the problem and the solution and how you're framing it has changed from the beginning to the end of that chat, you as a human are going to have a pretty good idea of where you are now and how you got there. And there can sometimes be the expectation that the LLM is where you are mentally, right? But if you think about, if you remember how that sliding context window goes, like it only has memory so far back, right? So every now and then, if you're doing that, it's a good idea to recenter yourself mentally, try to put everything together into a new prompt that encapsulates everything you've been working on and where you are currently, and experiment with maybe opening up a new session and starting from there, because it can only remember so far back. And sometimes if you're working in co-coding back and forth, if you've recently engaged in a lot of back and forth because the code isn't working, but it did before, it can't go back far enough to see the good code before you got in this back and forth trying to debug the code doesn't work. So you can kind of get that lost at some point. So multiple sessions are good. Some copy and paste out of good stuff. That way you make sure that you can always inject the latest good code back into that session, because sometimes it only remembers the bugs. So
Also, don't be afraid of the version history. So I'm going to have to revert back to a previous version because I cloned this notebook from Arif, who I'm sure a lot of you know. And then I apparently started changing his and not mine somehow. So I'll have to revert it back. But you also have your version history for things like that. Like if you've, you're playing around with the assistant and you've gone a little bit too far with it, you can actually go back. Anyone else? We have like 5 more minutes. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Definitely excited by any questions or any other kind of questions, even if it's not assistant, that I can help with. Yeah. All right. Well, looking forward to speaking with you all at Data Camp.
Thank you, Sheila. Just some quick notes as we're wrapping up. We will not have a town hall in November because, let me quickly share my screen again. And then that way I can, I'm gonna run through these slides quickly. Okay, so we have a maintenance event November 1st, but then just a note that we don't have a town hall in November because we do have our fall data camp, which will be November 12th and 13th from 1 to 5 p.m. each day, Eastern time. So invite did go out, as Amy said. If you did not receive an invite but would like to attend, please click the link that Laura shared in the chat. And then you can see that on our portal page as well. If you have any questions or issues in the meantime, please reach out via email or Slack. We really appreciate all of our presenters today presenting, and special thanks to Sheila for her demo. And be on the lookout because Databricks will have another presentation in our data camp, as Sheila said. And then just another plug for our monthly satisfaction survey. We would love to hear from you. And that link was shared as well. So thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.